don't listen to the haters, man, I treat them like the enemy. Had a couple traitors, man, but now they know the penalty.
This is by Weird History, and it's titled Weird But True Facts About Sparta. I wonder what, if anything at all, about this I will already know, or if this is all going to be brand new information from me. I learned about Sparta in high school. I learned about the Battle of Thermopylae. I learned about a whole bunch of stuff. I loved history class in school. It was my favorite subject, that and science. Math can suck my ass, but yeah, it was fantastic with history. So I'll probably learn a lot in this. I doubt that there's anything in here that I already know, because this is probably going to dive into very specific detail about certain things. So I'm ready though. Here we go.
Let's be real. Most of us learned any facts about the ancient Greek society known as Sparta from the 2006 film 300. But Spartans didn't just oil their pecs and kick dudes into pits. At least that's not all they did. While the movie, and our much more boring history books, highlights some of the more impressive aspects of Spartan society, there are plenty of weird facts about Sparta that seem too extreme to be real. So, today we're diving into some of the weird but true facts about Sparta. But
I mean, everything back in this time was kind of fucking weird, really, if you think about it. If you compare it to today's, I don't know, man. We got fucking TikTok, and that shit's pretty fucking weird. But you understand what I'm saying. Everything was pretty much weird back then, man.
first, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, leave a comment and let us know what other ancient civilizations you want to hear the dirt about. Okay, grab a sword and get cozy.
Drunk baptism. That doesn't sound weird at all. That actually kind of sounds
Spartans
like a
were
good
tough
time.
as nails, and their steel hearts and steelier skin began forming when they were babies. Immediately after birth, Spartan infants were bathed not in soap and water, but wine, because wine is cooler than water. But this wasn't done to give the babies a newborn buzz. The wine bath was a kind of macabre strength test. Spartans believed that overly weak babies would convulse and die in the wine bath, leaving only those who deserved their lives. Jeez, even...
Wow, dude. That is kind of macabre, actually. And this was actually something that was referenced in the movie. Whenever they were training their warriors and seeing if they were going to be up to the standard of being a Spartan warrior, right? They would inspect the baby, they would inspect the child. We even saw this as a scene in the movie. They would inspect the child, and if it was deformed or had anything wrong with it, off into a pit, right? So I think that scene in the movie was probably derived from something like this. I didn't know that. That is very damn.
Even birds who tossed their young out of the nest were like, calm down. Babies didn't have it easy after their wine soak either. Spartan mothers carried their be tough mantras into the nurseries and often left babies to cry alone for hours on end. This must have impressed other societies of the time, however, as Spartan women were often sought after.
To be honest, I kind of feel like you should do that right now with your child. I mean, you don't leave them there for like 10 fucking hours, but sometimes you gotta let these little bastards just cry it out, man. Eventually they'll stop, right? They'll stop. But they probably took it to the extreme.
Be nannies. That would be an interesting version of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
Spartan babies were also brought before the Council of Elders, who inspected their bodies for any deformities.
Yeah.
If, for any reason, a baby didn't live up to the elders' high standards, they were left to perish on a mountainside.
Damn.
Luckily, this practice went well out of fashion by the dawn of the family road trip. If you kids do not knock it off, I will turn this car around and leave you on a Spartan cliff.
The women were strong, bro, and they weren't.
In ancient Sparta, gender parity and female independence were entrenched in society. Physical fitness was considered an important value for both men and women, and women were encouraged to exercise publicly alongside their male counterparts, all completely buck naked, nude. But in Spartan culture, the nude form wasn't taught to induce lust, but instead to give women a care for good health. As a result, women would often compete in sports, including foot races and wrestling. You show up to your gym nude these days, all you hear is, "Yeah, you gotta put on your clothes or leave,
Yeah.
please." Have we
And
gone
he's probably talking about Planet Fitness.
backwards as a society? Sparta's emphasis on female strength helped them in practical matters too. Famously, Sparta did not build walls.
Yeah, dude, because when the men go off to war and the men go off to combat, I mean, what's left? The females. And the females have to be able to fucking protect some shit. They can't protect some shit if they're fucking weak, frail, and don't know how to fight. So they were probably just as competent. I mean, obviously not as strong as their male counterparts, but just as competent, could hold their own. I mean, this I do know.
To protect the city. As lawgiver and apparent action one-liner giver, like Kyrgyz said, a city is better protected with brave men and not by bricks. But what happens when most of those brave men are off fighting a war? Sparta was a long way past its prime by 272 BCE, no longer the dominant land power in Greece. With their army campaigning in Crete, the city looked ripe for plunder. Pyrrhus, the king of the ancient Greek kingdom Epirus, was still smarting from a costly expedition in Italy. So he decided to take advantage of the Sparta situation and led his army to the seemingly undefended city. Yet this decision would turn out to be
Costly.
a very bad idea.
Costly.
It's the kind of wisdom you'd expect from a guy who lent his name to the phrase Pyrrhic victory, meaning a battle won at so great a cost you would have been better off staying at home. With an attack on Sparta imminent, the Spartan women stayed to help defend the city,
See?
digging trenches, administering to the injured, and supporting with food, drink, and equipment the heavily outnumbered men left to defend the city. Over 2 days, the small Spartan force and a handful of allies from neighboring states held off the forces of Pyrrhus and forced him to turn back. Pyrrhus met his end soon afterward.
Damn. Poor Pyrrhus. Wedding party. Just about.
Forget hiring the perfect glam squad to give the bride the perfect updo. Spartan women actually cut their hair short or shaved off their locks completely before
Wow.
their wedding ceremonies. Why? Were they just big fans of Mad Max Fury Road? Well, some historians think it was to signal the transition from virgin to woman. Virgins wore their hair long. But upon becoming a wife, a woman was not allowed to wear her hair long again. And there
Really?
were presumably no compromises made for beehive hairdos or mohawks. But for Spartan brides, the head shaving was just the beginning of the tradition. Next, they put on men's clothes and sandals. Then they waited for their grooms to come steal them away in the night, but in a fun romantic way, not in a ransom type way.
Ah.
And then the happy couple couldn't live together for years to come. The military was so important to Sparta that the society's men were forced to live in a military barracks until they were 30 years old.
Wait, hold on. I'm gonna have to rewind for some of that. Yeah, dude, the Spartan women weren't pushovers. I mean, yeah, I get it, bro. Like, if obviously their like strength and all that stuff, they're inferior to their male counterpart and stuff like that. But they weren't no pushovers. They weren't no easy targets. And so that was one thing that the Spartan men wanted to make sure. Like, when we're gone, we need to know that like you can somewhat defend yourself and defend the homeland, right? While we're fucking gone, because who else is gonna do it, right? Your mother was born in Athens. Should probably brush up on this history. Let me go back. There were some things that I missed. Okay, so the thing about the haircuts, I think the only weird thing about the haircuts, so like virgins wore their hair long, and then once you got married, you cut your hair short. I don't really find anything weird with that. The only thing I find weird is that they weren't allowed to regrow it back out. They had to keep it short forever. And I guess that is to me that's a little weird, I suppose. Like, kind of figured like, yeah, I understand, but like why not let them grow it back out, bro? They already did the whole tradition, ceremony, rite of passage, all that stuff. But you know. And then he said something here that kind of confused me. Hold on.
In a ransom type way. And then the happy couple couldn't live together for years to come. The military.
But why though? There's got to be a reason behind that. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I missed something. I don't think I missed anything, but he kind of just like said that and then segued to something else. Why couldn't they live together for years to come? Maybe, I mean, Maybe that was just a byproduct of like, them going to war and like constantly being gone and stuff like that, and constantly going and conquering and doing all this kinds of stuff. But the way he says it, it almost seems like they were just simply not allowed until a certain point in their marriage, and then they could live together, right? But maybe it was just a byproduct of them always being at war, because they kind of always were, for the most part. Yeah. And training. Yeah, that's also true. So, makes sense. All right.
Military was so important to Sparta that the society's men were forced to live in a military barracks until they were 30 years old.
Damn. That's a lot of masturbation. Holy. Forced to live in a military barracks from the time you're born to the time you're 30? That's some serious dedication to military. That's some serious dedication to the fortification and the protection of your people and your land. That's fucking nuts. That, I don't think I knew that.
The happy couple couldn't live together for years.
No wonder they were so good at fighting, man. Like, I thought it was just like the vigorous training, which their training was no joke, but this is also another thing. You stick a fucking dude inside of a damn box for 30 fucking years. He's gonna come out of that box feral, mad, so much aggression. Yeah, bro. And then you send him to war, bro, he's killing everybody. Everybody. Oh my god, they set me free. I'm about to fucking kill you as fast as possible and then get back to my lady so I can finally take her to Pound Town. Yeah.
The military was so important to Sparta that the society's men were forced to live in a military barracks until they were 30 years old. While Spartan culture did prefer men to marry at this age, many married several years earlier. And for these unlucky couples, they weren't able to sleep under one
That's why they didn't see each other. That makes sense. Okay, so he pretty much answered my question.
roof together for years. Long-distance relationships are a killer. Despite this type of delay, marriage was undeniably important to Spartan culture. So much so that Spartan bachelors were often looked down upon and ridiculed for not adding to Sparta's ranks.
Damn.
Bachelor party was not a common rental.
Damn. So if you didn't get married or have children, you were a turd. In the eyes of Sparta. Like, motherfucker, you're not helping, man. You don't have a wife. You haven't given us another soldier, right? Because that's what birth is. You're pretty much giving birth to another troop. You're giving birth to another soldier. You're giving birth to the continued protection of the land and the people. And if you ain't doing that, you're just a turd. Damn. That's pretty cutthroat. I mean, were they? Wait, so 300 was right about the Spartans being mega gay? I mean, I don't remember that part of the movie, but one can assume, one can make the assumption that you put all of these men in a military barracks for years upon years upon years until they're 30. You know, sometimes masturbation can only take you so far, right? So maybe there's a little bit of you know. So
There are only three.
what did it say? Gravely serious.
There are only three constants in life: death, taxes, and some of that tax money being spent on tombstones after death. But in Sparta, the tombstone was only meted out to those who truly deserved one, namely the soldier who was slain on the battlefield. In fact,
I'm sorry, like I wasn't paying attention during any of that. I was still thinking about like the gay Spartans. My bad.
only three constants in life: death, taxes, and some of that tax money being spent on tombstones after death. But in Sparta, the tombstone was only meted out to those who truly deserved one, namely the soldier who was slain on the battlefield. In fact, that soldier would be buried with a gravestone on the very battlefield they died,
Oh,
with
wow.
only their name and the phrase "in war" engraved. That is not only extremely metal, but an open invitation for a serious haunting.
Yeah.
There was only one other class of deceased who deserved a marker in the ground: women who died in childbirth. Because they bore the future warriors of Sparta, these women were respected enough to acquire a headstone in death.
So if you didn't die in combat, you didn't get a headstone. You didn't get a tombstone. If you actually didn't die fighting valiantly for your people, Sparta was like, the fuck do we need to give this to you for? What did you do? What did you do? You didn't sacrifice yourself. You did nothing, man. I mean, they still fought, right? But yeah. And then the women that died during childbirth. I'm assuming that because they had a rule or like some kind of like, you know, something for that. I'm assuming that this was probably pretty prevalent back in those times, women dying during childbirth. And it kind of makes sense because back in these times, it's not like we have like the doctors and the hospitals and the caregivers that we have now when it comes to females giving birth and stuff like that. So I'm assuming this happened enough to where they made this a thing. Like, okay, we're gonna give this to these women.
It's unknown what was inscribed on them. As for all the other dead Spartans, presumably left on a cliff somewhere.
Damn. A helot of a gig.
Spartan citizens were, let's say, not sympathetic to those they conquered. When they would devastate and destroy a fellow Greek stronghold, especially those from Laconia and Messenia, they would enslave their prisoners and give them the term helots, which linguists assert comes from the root word for to be made prisoner. And life for them was pretty much helot on earth. Since a Spartan's focus was always on being a soldier, the helots did most of the unskilled labor in Sparta, including being farmers, domestic servants, and nurses. And before you ask how much they got paid, they didn't.
Nothing.
They were straight up enslaved.
Yeah.
The Spartans could be cruel in their treatment to their enslaved workers. Some would even force a helot to become extremely intoxicated so they would act foolish in public. Then the Spartan men would ridicule the drunken helots and use them as examples for their sons on how not to behave.
Damn.
Most viciously, each year the Spartans declared a sort of mass war on the helots, in a tradition that felt like the Hunger Games crossed with the Purge, with just an extra dash of wanton destruction for good measure. Young Spartan men who had just...
That was probably their entertainment, to be completely honest. Really. That's wild. Jesus. We're gonna conquer you, and then we're gonna enslave you, and then we're gonna treat you like shit, and then we're gonna make you do stupid shit, and we're gonna embarrass you, and once every year, we're just gonna let you run off into the fucking wilderness, and then we're gonna fucking find you and hunt you because we enjoy the hunt, and then we're gonna fucking kill you, all for sport or entertainment. Or we'll have you fight one of our best warriors, and then everyone can watch, like pay-per-view, right? Like a Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield, except that guy's Mike Tyson. You're not Evander Holyfield. You're just you. That's rough. Holy.
Completed their military training, were encouraged to track down and slay as many slaves as they could, especially the strongest and fittest.
Yeah.
Ironically, since the helots constituted such a large portion of the Spartan population, with 7 helots to every 1 Spartan, there was always a fear of an uprising. Thus, this yearly celebration of terrorism showed the helots the dominance of the Spartan force and quelled any thoughts for uprisings.
Yeah, don't think for one fucking second y'all can beat us. You know what? Let me remind you. Holy. Bro, that is pretty savage.
Creating a cycle of oppression and violence.
Start 'em young.
Some typical milestones for a 7-year-old in the modern age include developing a sense of time, being able to solve simple math problems, and becoming empathetic. Now, here are some typical milestones for a Spartan 7-year-old. 1. Wielding a sword. 2. Becoming an indestructible avatar of death. Yeah, there's a subtle difference there. At age 7, Spartan boys were taken away from their parents and began training for the military. During this training process, these boys would compete in refereed fights with other boys. They were told to steal food, as a cunning soldier should be able to do. And if they were caught stealing the food they were told to steal, they got flogged. In fact, flogging was a sort of go-to punishment for the Spartans. And if the boys cried while being flogged, They were flogged again until they could bear the pain in silence. But what happens if the floggers screw up flogging? Who flogs the flogmen? At age 12, the Spartan boys were sent out to the wilderness with nothing but a cloak, and then were expected to fend for themselves. If they survived this experience, the boys joined the Spartan army at age 20, where they remained reserve soldiers until reaching the age of 60. And if they thought about early retirement, you guessed it, more flogging.
Damn. Two kings are better than one.
The Spartan political structure was unique from most other Greek societies at the time, in that they had a dual kingship, or two kings, that ruled together at the same time. They presumably...
That I did not know. They didn't really... Maybe that was depicted in the movie? I can't remember. And again, bro, I learned about this in high school, but the teacher didn't go into this much detail when it came to Sparta.
They also shared an apartment and had a catchy theme song. The kings did not have unlimited power, but were balanced by an elected board of senior magistrates, which they called ephors, and a council of elders who were all over 60. There was also a general assembly of citizens, which Sparta defined as men over 30, who elected these officials to their positions.
Well, that was good to know. I actually, that was also probably depicted in the movie as well. Now that I'm remembering a little bit. Ephors, I believe that term was actually used in the movie. Really. Ironclad currency.
When you think about it, the concept of money as we know it, little slips of paper we trade with each other for doing things like making food or placing cucumbers over our eyes, is...
Ephors were those leper priests in the movie. The ones that looked all weird and fucked up. Some of them almost didn't even look human, to be honest.
Arbitrary. Money can be really any object. And yet, the Spartan currency, which is literally big iron rods, does feel a little bit silly. How do you put that in your wallet?
Currency is what is the value that you give it. That's what it is. Nothing has intrinsic value just because it has it. You, the individual, the people, give it the value. So it really could, like, your currency could be anything. Your currency could be fucking grass, really.
But as Greek philosopher Plutarch pointed out, the inconvenience was the point. For who would steal or receive as a bribe, or rob or plunder that which could neither be concealed nor possessed with satisfaction, nay, nor even cut to pieces with any profit?
I mean, yo, soon to sub. I do like me the fun grass. You bet your sweet ass. I love me some fun grass.
Plutarch probably crushed high school debate. In addition to being harder to steal, iron currency in ancient times made sense for several reasons. First, metal is difficult to damage and doesn't break down easily, unlike paper money, which has to be folded just right in order to fit into a vending machine. Second, metal tools can pretty much be used anywhere, so it doesn't matter if you're exchanging money with your Spartan neighbor or the traveler visiting from Athens. And
that is pretty ironclad, actually. Yeah. Man, that's actually pretty smart. They developed a very, very good way to make sure that their currency never failed.
Everyone can find a use for a big metal rod. No vending machine would dare deny you. So what do you think? Was Sparta just like you pictured, or not at all what you expected?
No, that's pretty much what I expected. There was quite a few things in here that I didn't know. But there was also quite a few things in here that I did know, and that's pretty much on par what I was expecting as far as weird but true facts about Sparta. I think the weirdest one, and the term weird really is subjective. It really all depends on what you deem weird. But I think the fact that after the women shaved their head after getting married, they weren't allowed to grow it back out. That's kind of weird. I think that's the weirdest one, really, compared to anything. I don't know. What did y'all think was the weirdest one? Everything else. One thing I love about Sparta is just their dedication to being a warrior. Like, That's it, bro. That's what they were. Eat, sleep, breathe, and live being a warrior, being a savage, being a fighter, man. Military service was paramount. And not to mention, the Spartans had some fantastic military tactics, the phalanx being like one of my favorites. And they're just so badass, man. Like that level of dedication to just military service and being a fighter, being a warrior, training your children from the earliest of ages, like just forged in fire, right? And even the women, the women had to be also up to par, also up to the task. There was no room for weakness. There was no room for complaining. There was no room for quitting. Like there was none of that, man. Like none of that at all. And I like that. I mean, we have modern day Spartans. They're called Navy SEALs. Think about it. Look at the training that they do. Look how rigorous it is. Look how difficult it is. Look how many try and fail, man. But it is a little different compared to this because whereas in, being a Navy SEAL is all voluntary and you have to want it and you have to love that shit and you have to dedicate super hard. Being a Spartan, you didn't have a choice. You were gonna be a warrior. Like that's it. That's the life you were born into. You were gonna be a warrior. You were gonna be a fighter. You were gonna slay. Right? That was just the whole thing. Like if you took the Spartans of back then and put them in modern times with the military equipment that we have and the technology that we have, oof. Oof. Ain't nobody beating that. You take their dedication for military service and their dedication and their willpower and their intestinal fortitude that they not only apply to their children but their women as well, and you give them modern day weaponry and shit like that. Bro. The Spartans training system. Okay, gotcha. Bro, they're fucking up everybody. They're fucking, at least in my opinion, they're fucking up everybody.